There's an old house at the edge of a forgotten English village. Wind whispers through its crooked chimneys, and time has curled the corners of every page left behind. They say it holds a treasure, not of gold or jewels, but of something far older and far more dangerous to those who come seeking. One rainy evening, a quiet maid named Clara found a box hidden beneath the stone floor. A box that was never meant to be opened. Asterisk. Unless you weren't looking for anything at all. The Silent Gold. In a quiet stretch of northern England, where the hills roll like old green quilts and time moves slower than the breeze, there stood a stone house at the edge of a forgotten lane. Ivy clung to its walls like memory, and the iron gate squeaked every time the wind passed through, as if the house sighed in its sleep. The locals called it Ashdown House, though no one could remember who Ashdown was. Some said a sea captain once lived there, others swore it was an old tax collector's manor. Whatever the truth, the house had long since passed into the hands of Mr. Whitmore, a man with hollow eyes, sharp fingers, and a heart full of ledgers. He collected things. Strange things. Old boxes, faded maps, coins with languages no one spoke anymore. He lived alone, except for a girl who came every morning and stayed until the oil lamps were lit. Her name was Clara. 23, quiet as linen in the wind. She swept the floors, polished the silver, and stayed out of Mr. Whitmore's way. He paid her as little as he could get away with, a few pounds a week and a crust of bread if she arrived early. She never complained. Not once. Clara had learned to move without sound, to close doors gently, to step around the creaking boards, to fold linens in a way that made them sigh rather than rustle. The house seemed to like her for it. Sometimes, when the kettle whistled in the late afternoons, she could feel the walls hum, as if the place were remembering something only it and time knew. She never spoke of it, but Clara had the strange sense that the house was watching her, and waiting. Mr. Whitmore, meanwhile, rarely left his study. He spent his days hunched over yellowed papers and brittle scrolls, speaking only to himself or to the dust. He had once shown Clara a faded sketch of an old chest, curved, with strange symbols etched into its sides. Worth a fortune, if it's real, he had mumbled, not really to her. Legend says it was hidden, long ago, by a traveller who never came back. She hadn't asked who the traveller was, or where he came from. Mr. Whitmore didn't like questions. But she remembered the drawing. Especially the mark carved at the corner, like a flame turned inward. And then, weeks later, she saw the same mark scratched into the underside of an old floorboard in the cellar. The cellar was cold, stone-lined, and smelled of earth. Clara only went there when she had to fetch firewood, mostly, or a jar of pickled onions Mr. Whitmore had long forgotten. But that day, she had tripped on a step. Her hand had slid across the rough beam, and her fingers found it, the mark. The same symbol as in the drawing. She brushed the dust away with her sleeve and leaned closer. The shape was nearly perfect, though dulled with age, an inward flame, carved deep into the grain. She didn't say anything. Not to Mr. Whitmore. Not to anyone. Instead, each evening after work, she began returning to the cellar. With a lantern and a small brush, she cleaned away cobwebs. She looked for other marks. She listened. And after a week, she found something strange, a hollow sound beneath a loose stone slab. Clara knelt on the stone floor, brushing her fingers across the uneven surface. The slab was old, worn smooth at the edges, but one corner was chipped, just enough to slide her nails beneath it. She pressed gently. It shifted. Her heart thudded. She returned the next evening with a thin iron poker she had borrowed from a fireplace. Carefully, quietly, she pried the slab loose. Beneath it was darkness, a shallow pit, no more than a foot deep, lined with something like rotting cloth and cold dirt. And within that, a box. Wooden, small, locked with iron, and carved with the same flame-like symbol. She didn't dare open it there. She wrapped it in a linen cloth, carried it up the stairs, and hid it under her bed. That night, she barely slept. In the early hours, before Mr. Whitmore stirred from his bed, Clara lit a candle and uncovered the box. It was heavier than it looked. The wood was dark, with veins like smoke running through the grain. The iron lock was rusted, but intact. She ran her fingers over the carvings, the same symbol repeating along the corners, like a ward. She didn't have a key. And so, for days, she simply kept it close. She worked as usual, sweeping and polishing, all while feeling the weight of the secret under her bed. Mr. Whitmore noticed a change in her, not that she spoke more, but that her eyes seemed far away, as if listening to something he couldn't hear. Then, one afternoon, she returned from the village and found her attic door open. Her heart caught in her throat. She climbed the steps slowly, the wooden tray of groceries trembling in her hands. At the top of the stairs, her door stood ajar, the latch dangling. Inside, everything appeared untouched, except the space beneath her bed. The box was gone. Downstairs, Mr. Whitmore was sitting at his desk, turning something over in his hands. When she stepped into the doorway, he didn't look up. "Curious thing," he said softly. "Found it quite by accident. You've been hiding things, Clara." She stood in silence. "You wouldn't understand its value," he continued. "But I do. It's older than this country. Older than most kings." He waved her away like a fly. "You may go." But Clara didn't move. And deep inside, something old and quiet began to stir. That evening, the house was colder than usual. Rain tapped against the windows like fingers, and the fire in the hearth hissed low. Clara sat at the top of the staircase, listening. Mr. Whitmore had locked himself in the study. Through the door, she heard him pacing, muttering, and the sharp scrape of metal on wood. He was trying to open the box. She knew, somehow, that he shouldn't. At midnight, she crept to her attic room and opened the small drawer beside her bed. Inside was a key she had found weeks ago in the cellar, forgotten on a rusted hook. She hadn't known what it opened. Until now. With the key wrapped in cloth, Clara returned to the study door. She pressed her ear against the wood. Silence. She knocked gently. No answer. When she turned the knob, it moved freely. Mr. Whitmore was slumped in his chair, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. The box sat on the desk, unopened, the lock untouched. The key in her hand pulsed with warmth. She stepped forward, reached for the box, and held it close. Then she left the study without a word, closing the door behind her. She didn't look back. Clara waited until dawn. She lit 3 candles, placed the box on the floor, and set the key beside it. The attic was quiet, the world below still wrapped in sleep. With steady hands, she slid the key into the lock. It clicked once, then again, a third time, softer, like breath. The lid creaked open. Inside was no treasure in the ordinary sense. No gold coins or glittering jewels. Only soft cloth, old parchment, and a small vial of golden dust. And beneath it all, a single sheet of folded paper. She unfolded it with care and read the words written in ancient ink. The one who opens this with greed shall find only emptiness. But the one who seeks nothing shall inherit everything. Clara stared at the message, the candlelight trembling across the delicate handwriting. It didn't feel like a warning, more like a truth whispered from another time. She carefully lifted the parchment and found another item beneath it, a slender medallion on a faded cord. It looked simple at first, but as she turned it in her fingers, the metal shimmered faintly, like moonlight caught in water. She placed it over her heart without thinking. And the moment it touched her skin, the room exhaled. Not literally, but the air felt different. Warmer, lighter, as if something old and heavy had been released. Downstairs, the house groaned. And then, ear silence. Clara stood still, the medallion resting gently against her chest. It wasn't cold like metal should be, it was warm, like hands that had waited centuries to hold hers. She wrapped the parchment again and returned everything to the box. But this time, she didn't hide it. She left it on the windowsill, where the rising sun touched its edges with gold. Later that morning, Mr. Whitmore did not come down for breakfast. When Clara checked on him, he was still in the same chair, eyes closed now, as if in deep sleep. But something in the room had changed. The air, the weight of it. Like a page had turned. She didn't wake him. She simply closed the door. The house, for the first time in years, felt calm. Days passed quietly in Ashdown House. The heavy fog that often cloaked the village seemed less oppressive, as if the very air had been lightened by Clara's discovery. She moved through the rooms with a new sense of calm, her footsteps no longer hesitant but sure. The villagers began to notice small changes too. The ancient oak outside the manor, once withered and grey, now showed signs of fresh buds. The garden, long untended, hinted at new life beneath the frost. One afternoon, while clearing the attic, Clara found a hidden compartment in an old cabinet. Inside lay a leather-bound journal, its pages brittle but filled with delicate handwriting. It belonged to a traveller from long ago, who had chronicled a journey from distant lands to this very house. As Clara read, she realized the journal held clues, not to gold or jewels, but to a deeper treasure. The traveller wrote of kindness, patience, and the strength found in quiet courage. She closed the book gently, feeling the weight of something greater than any fortune. That night, Clara sat by the window, the journal resting on her lap. The moonlight spilled over the pages, casting gentle shadows on the room. The traveller's words echoed softly in her mind, like a lullaby of hope and resilience. She thought of Mr. Whitmore, now silent in his chair, and wondered what secrets the house still kept. The gold and jewels she had imagined were nothing compared to the quiet strength in those handwritten lines. As the village slept beneath the stars, Clara felt a calm settle within her, a quiet promise that she was exactly where she needed to be. The following days unfolded slowly, like the turning of an ancient page. Clara found herself drawn deeper into the traveller's journal, discovering tales of kindness between strangers, humble victories over hardship, and a belief that true wealth was measured by the heart's capacity to give. The more she read, the more she noticed the house itself seemed to breathe differently. The creaks in the floor softened, the air held a faint scent of wildflowers, and the dull grey skies outside began to lighten. Mr. Whitmore remained silent, his presence almost ghostly. Clara understood that the old man was part of the house's story too, bound by his own shadows, waiting for release. One rainy afternoon, Clara decided to explore the overgrown garden behind the manor. Thorns and weeds tangled around ancient stone statues, and the fountain at the center was dry and cracked. As she cleared away some branches, she uncovered a small, moss-covered box buried beneath the earth. It was old, much older than the house itself, and carved with the same flame-like symbol she had seen before. Inside, she found a folded letter, yellowed with age. The handwriting was elegant, the ink faded but still legible. It read, "To the finder of this treasure, know that it is not gold, but love and patience that hold the true riches of life." Clara felt tears prick her eyes as she folded the letter back carefully. She realized the journey wasn't about material wealth, but about discovering the quiet gifts life offers to those who listen. That evening, she lit the fireplace and placed the letter beside the glowing embers. Outside, the wind sang softly, as if approving her newfound understanding. From that night, Clara found herself humming old songs she had heard as a child, filling the empty corners of Ashdown House with warmth and light. The village began to change, little by little. Neighbors who once kept to themselves now greeted Clara warmly. Children played near the manor's gate, their laughter ringing like bells through the mist. Mr. Whitmore's once cold study was now open to the light, the heavy curtains drawn back for the first time in decades. The man himself sat quietly by the window, watching the world with softened eyes. Though he said little, Clara sensed a peace settling in him, as if the house and its stories had finally begun to heal. One morning, Clara discovered a hidden door behind a faded tapestry in the main hallway. The door was old and heavy, secured with a rusty latch. With a mix of curiosity and reverence, she lifted the latch and pushed the door open. Behind it lay a narrow staircase spiraling downwards into darkness. Taking a deep breath, Clara lit a lantern and stepped inside, her footsteps echoing softly. The staircase wound deep beneath the house, cool stone walls closing in around Clara as she descended. The air was damp and smelled of earth and forgotten things. At the bottom, she found herself in a small chamber, lit only by the soft glow of her lantern. Against one wall stood a wooden chest, ancient and covered in dust. The same flame-like symbol from before was carved into its lid, worn smooth by time. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached out and lifted the heavy lid. Inside lay a collection of simple items, a weathered journal, a bundle of dried herbs, and a small, intricately carved wooden box. There was no gold, no jewels. Yet Clara felt a quiet warmth emanate from the chest, as if it held the heart of the house itself. Clara carefully opened the wooden box inside the chest. Nestled within was a delicate locket, its surface etched with the flame symbol. She lifted it and found, inside, a faded miniature painting of a serene countryside and a tiny folded note. Unfolding the note, she read, "True treasure is not silver or gold, but the love we nurture, the patience we carry, and the peace we find within." her eyes filled with tears, not of sorrow, but of understanding. Back upstairs, Clara placed the locket around her neck. It felt warm against her skin, comforting as a gentle embrace. She walked through the quiet house, touching the worn wooden banister, the soft curtains, and the faded portraits hanging on the walls. Each corner seemed to whisper stories of hope, forgiveness, and the enduring strength of kindness. For the first time, Ashdown House felt like home. Days turned to weeks, and Clara found herself blossoming alongside the house. Her quiet smile grew brighter, her steps lighter. Neighbors stopped by, drawn by the subtle change that seemed to ripple from the manor itself. Mr. Whitmore, too, began to thaw. One afternoon, he invited Clara to sit beside him by the fire and spoke softly. "Thank you," he whispered, "for seeing what I could not." Clara nodded, her heart full. The house held its secrets no longer. Its treasure had revealed itself, not in gold or jewels, but in the gentle power of acceptance and love. Together, Clara and Mr. Whitmore began to care for Ashdown House, restoring its faded beauty with quiet hands and hopeful hearts. The legend of the treasure was no longer a mystery, but a promise fulfilled. One crisp morning, Clara stood by the garden fountain, now bubbling with clear water, sunlight dancing on the ripples. She felt the locket warm against her chest and smiled. The village had changed too. Neighbors shared meals, stories, and laughter. The gold that once seemed lost had transformed into something far more precious, a community reborn. Word spread beyond the village, drawing visitors curious about the gentle magic of Ashdown House. But Clara knew the true treasure was simple: quiet moments, shared kindness, and the strength to hope even when the world seemed dark. She welcomed each visitor with a soft smile, ready to share the story of a treasure that belonged to all who dared to believe. As the seasons changed, Ashdown House became a sanctuary, not just for Clara and Mr. Whitmore, but for all who sought rest from the harshness of the world. People came to sit by the fire, to listen to the wind through the trees, to find a moment of peace in a busy life. And Clara, once a quiet servant, found her voice blossoming with stories, songs, and laughter, filling the rooms with warmth. One evening, as twilight draped the village in soft purple hues, Clara stood on the porch, gazing at the stars. She held the medallion in her hand, feeling the faint pulse of its gentle magic. It reminded her that treasures don't always shine or sparkle. Sometimes, they glow quietly in the heart, waiting to be discovered by those who seek not riches, but meaning. Mr. Whitmore, too, began to change. The sharp lines of worry softened, his eyes no longer hollow but bright with newfound calm. He helped Clara tend the garden, speaking little but smiling often. Together, they created a home that breathed kindness and hope. One crisp morning, Clara found a letter slipped beneath her door. It was from a traveller who had once stayed in Ashdown House long ago, the very one who had hidden the treasures. He wrote of his journey and the lessons he'd learned, the greatest wealth found not in coin, but in patience, love, and quiet courage. Clara read the letter by the fireside, feeling the warmth spread through her. She understood now that the story she was part of was bigger than herself. It was a legacy of light passed from hand to hand, across time and place, carried by those willing to listen. The villagers celebrated the changing of the seasons with a small festival near Ashdown House. Laughter and music filled the air. Clara shared stories of the traveller and the hidden treasure, not of gold, but of heart. Mr. Whitmore raised a quiet toast, his eyes reflecting the dancing flames. As night deepened, Clara walked alone through the garden, the scent of blooming flowers around her. She looked up to the stars and whispered a thanks for the journey, the house, the people she'd come to love. Her heart was full. The house, once silent and shadowed, now sang softly with life. Its walls held memories, laughter, and dreams. Clara knew that she was part of its story now, a story that would live on in every gentle breeze and quiet moment. One rainy afternoon, a young woman from the village knocked on the manor door. She was shy, with hopeful eyes. Clara welcomed her inside and offered a warm smile. The young woman had heard the story and wished to learn. Together, they tended the garden, shared tea, and spoke softly of courage and kindness. Clara realized that the treasure was not just hers to keep, but a gift to share. The legacy of Ashdown House was growing, carried by new hearts and hands. Spring arrived with gentle rains and soft sunlight, bathing the village in fresh colors. Clara and the young woman, whose name was Emily, worked side by side, planting seeds and tending the flowers. Emily listened intently as Clara shared the story of the traveler's journal, the medallion, and the treasure not of gold, but of quiet strength and love. Together, they dreamed of a future where kindness would spread like wildflowers, rooting deeply in every heart. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Mr. Whitmore joined them on the porch. His once rigid hands now moved with purpose and care, gently helping to plant bulbs in the earth. He spoke softly of forgiveness, of the burdens he had carried, and how Clara's gentle light had lifted them. The old man's eyes shone with gratitude and peace, a silent thank you for the healing that had come. As summer's warmth filled the air, Ashdown House became a place of gathering. Neighbors brought stories, songs, and simple meals to share. Clara's laughter rang through the halls, and Mr. Whitmore's presence became a comforting anchor. The house was alive, full of hope, love, and the kind of treasure that no money could buy. One starry night, Clara stood alone beneath the old oak tree. The medallion glowed faintly against her chest, a soft pulse like a heartbeat. She closed her eyes and breathed in the quiet magic of the moment, the peace, the love, the endless possibilities. The treasure was not hidden beneath floors or locked in chests. It was alive, in her heart, in the house, and in every soul touched by its story. Morning dawned with a golden light that warmed the hills and filled Ashdown House with promise. Clara opened the windows wide, letting the fresh breeze carry whispers of hope through every room. She smiled, knowing that the true treasure was never about gold or riches, but the quiet miracles found in love, kindness, and the courage to believe. And so, the story of Ashdown House lived on, an eternal flame glowing softly in the hearts of all who heard it. you.